Hello everyone and welcome to Coconut Gaming Life. I am your Coconut Gamer. I hope you guys are doing well on this fine day. I just wanted to take a couple minutes of your time, mainly because I've recently been working on completing Monster Hunter World, and I thought it might be fun to make a video answering the question, well, should you play Monster Hunter World in 2025? Now, just a super quick clarification. When I refer to Monster Hunter World, just assume that I mean Monster Hunter World and its expansion Iceborne, and if I happen to refer to Monster Hunter Rise, this is going to include the Sunbreak expansion as well. So, like I said, I've recently gotten back into Monster Hunter World. With Monster Hunter Wilds releasing about a month from now, I kind of wanted to dip my toes back into the Monster Hunter universe, just to whet my appetite again. And I really want to be able to say that I've really beaten the game and completed all that it has to offer, and the reality is that there are still a few monsters left in the endgame that I've just never hunted. I have about 1,000 or so hours in World, and roughly about 12 to 1,300 hours in Rise. I know, there are a ton of Monster Hunter vets out there yelling that those are rookie numbers, and I really gotta pump those up. And I promise you, I am trying, I'm doing my best, but there's just so many games to play these days, it's proving to be a bit of a challenge. So, anyways, that's sort of the perspective I have when answering the question of whether or not you should play Monster Hunter World. If I'm gonna answer that question just right off the rip, I mean, I have 1,000 hours in one game and 1,300 hours in another. The answer is yes. For me, absolutely yes. Yes. I just wholeheartedly recommend this game. I really do think it is a game that is worth your time. It's just really so good. It has a ton of deep systems, complex combat with a butt ton of different playstyles. It has engaging exploration, if that's what you're into, and an incredibly addictive gameplay loop, which is what kind of hooked me. So, for me, it is a resounding yes. 100%. But that's the type of gamer that I am. However, I do recognize that there are some roadblocks that can come up, which we'll touch on a little bit later in the video. But if you consider them non-issues, then I really do think that everyone should give Monster Hunter World a playthrough. It'll be worth the time. So now that I've told you that I think you should play it, but that doesn't help if you don't actually know what it is. So what is Monster Hunter World and why should you play it? At its very core, Monster Hunter World is an action RPG where you take control of an elite hunter. You are, story-wise, you're part of an expedition team that is exploring a largely unexplored and new continent that everyone just refers to as the New World. The gameplay loop is specific, simple, and very satisfying. It is incredibly addictive. The basic premise is that you go out and hunt monsters. The game's called Monster Hunter. That's where we're going with this. So, from those hunts, you take the monster parts that you collect and rewards from the hunts, and you use them to craft better weapons and better armor. The purpose of that is so that you can hunt bigger, tougher, new monsters, and you basically repeat this forever. There's lots of exploration to also do in each of the biomes as well. You probably, like me, will end up spending a lot of time gathering resources such as plants, ores, mushrooms, in order to craft helpful items that give you an edge in a given hunt. Later on in the game as well, you'll be able to unlock and use a farm where you can grow a lot of this stuff as well to save on some of the gathering missions that you do. But there's a lot of fun to be had, because for me, sometimes I just end up exploring the biomes just to see what nooks and crannies you can find, any secrets that you can uncover, spending a lot of time just collecting bugs and endemic life, going fishing. There is so much to do outside of just hunting as well. The simplicity and complexity in balance with each other in these systems is really what kept me engaged for over 1,000 hours at this point. One of the interesting things about the basic gameplay loop of hunting, crafting, to hunt again, is that the armor that you're crafting isn't just about building the armor piece with the better defense or a weapon with better attack numbers. Obviously those things help, but that's not necessarily at the core of what you're trying to do, but rather creating specific builds for your playstyle and weapon set. Each armor piece contains skills baked into them, and later on slots for you to add even more skills into each armor piece. And these skills have tremendous impact on your chosen weapon and your playstyle. So there can be a ton of creativity and expression in how you build your hunter and what skills you like to focus on. There isn't really a best set necessarily for everything. Well, I guess maybe there is, but it's at the very end game, and it's sort of as a reward to having beaten all of the greatest challenges, the hardest monsters in the game. So that's not in 90% of the game. But before that, it's really up to you, and specifically the weapon that you choose. Do you want to optimize for damage? The trade-off to that, obviously, is having limited healing options and defensive options, but you're gonna crap out damage. You can do that. You can also make, on the other side of the scale, a super comfy build with a ton of survivability that trades higher DPS. It might make hunts take longer for sure, but hey, a win is a win. If you were able to keep hunting without carting and failing the mission, it doesn't matter if it takes 5 minutes of 50, you'll still get the win. Maybe you like utility, where you can heal your team on the fly, buff them up, debuff the monsters before you start the fight. That's available too. There are a ton of options. You can mix and match these, find something in the middle that works for you. Do it. So many ways to play it. Now, there are 14 weapon types in the game, and they all play insanely differently from each other. The gameplay that you've been watching in the background is just a small sample of what some of these weapons can do. It's mainly just the weapons that I have some amount of experience with. It is obviously not cracked gameplay, but it's just there to sort of show a bit of what styles you can expect to do with the weapons. Do you like big damage numbers? Slow, more methodical gameplay where your positioning and monster knowledge matters? Grab that greatsword and just bring the destruction. Maybe you like fast, non-stop aggression with high mobility, high DPS uptime, and just non-stop attacking. Maybe you just want to do your best roleplay of Levi Ackerman. Dual blades. All 100% dual blades. Go all out. Maybe you really want to let your inner weeb out and play out your samurai fantasy. Maybe you just love the parry style and the flashy animations of sheathing and countering and eating a hit but then parrying it into big damage. Then, the longsword's probably for you. Me personally, I'm a big fan of big explosions. big explosions is what gives me my dopamine fix. I like to be able to stand my ground, have a big sturdy shield, and just blow things up. So, my main is the gun lance. I love it. Its playstyle is varied and just a ton of fun with lots of blowing things up. Of course, I gotta mix it up a little bit too. So, if I feel like adding a little more complexity to my playstyle, but still can't quite give up the explosions, I keep a charge blade in my pocket, particularly the SAED gameplay style. I know, it's not meta. Savage Axe for charge blade is the meta in Monster Hunter World, but for me, I just cannot trade off things blowing up. And the reality is, it's all viable. Up until the very, very end game, and if you're good enough with your weapon, even into the end game, hardest monsters, you can play the way that you want to play. So, I play SAED, blow things up. Both of these weapons have tons of explosions, knockbacks, I can get a ton of flinches and staggers, but the cost is it is a slower playstyle and a more methodical approach. I can't just keep swinging because I get animation locked and punished if I do it wrong. Maybe you're more of a jack of all trades. You like to be able to have good utility and a lot of options in a fight. Sword and Shield is totally up your alley. You can be buffing up your teammates while being able to output a heck of a ton of damage. But if monsters have hard parts or parts that you'll bounce off of, just use that shield attack. And not a problem. Sword and Shield can cover up most weaknesses other weapons have. Or maybe Legolas is more your jam. You want to have your flowing golden hair flying in the battlefield as you dance around the monster. Grab that bow and get to dancing. The monster will not be able to move without being bombarded with your arrows if you're playing that bad boy right. There's honestly so many more weapons. I think maybe I covered half of them here. There's so many playstyles that are very unique to each weapon, and I 100% believe that anybody could find a playstyle that fits them from the 14 options that the game offers. And honestly, once you start getting bored of one, it's like a new experience. The next new weapon that you try. Now, once you get to the end game, there are also other materials that you can farm to take your fashion to the next level. You can transmog your favorite sets, or make a mixed set of your own, and it does not affect any of the stats or skills that you have on your actually equipped armor. So you get the best of both worlds. All the skills for your build without looking like an absolute clown. Unless that's what you're really going for. You do you, look like a clown if you want to. Now, I have been talking for quite a while about all the great things about Monster Hunter World. I understand though that it is not a perfect game, and then people will have some criticisms and qualms with it, and it wouldn't be necessarily fair if I just sang its praises the whole time. So here are a couple of things that I found weren't up to snuff for me that might be a deal breaker for you. One of the weaker aspects in the game, in my opinion, unfortunately, is the story. If you're looking for like a next level narrative that's engaging and compelling with complex motivations and deep characters and character development, with like a progression in its storyline with big reveals, you're probably gonna have to look elsewhere for that. In my opinion, the story is fine. Fine is probably the best word I can use. It serves to move the player forward into other biomes introduces new monsters to hunt, and in that way, it does its job well. The reality is, though, in the Monster Hunter franchise, story hasn't really been a huge selling point or focus up until now, but it is good enough to just keep you playing, to keep progressing towards something. At the end of the day, it's gonna be the moment-to-moment gameplay loop that has kept me engaged and many others just playing for all those hundreds of hours. It wasn't the story, unfortunately. The other criticism of Monster Hunter World is, I guess people have often said that the game can feel clunky or janky or slow, and they would be right in that. The reality is, for me, it took me 4 separate tries with new saves where I'd play for a couple hours and then it not be for me and I leave it for months and then try again 4 separate times before it finally clicked with me and I got into the rhythm of how the game is kind of played. But that was me. Now, I don't think that this is going to be a particularly big hindrance for most players these days. The truth is, with the huge rise of Soulsborne games and Souls-like games, I really do think that players are much more accustomed to slower, more methodical gameplay, and people have a better grasp of using iframes to dodge attacks and are familiar with the concept of animation commitments when it comes to attacking. If I'm winding up and swinging my biggest attack, I'm locked into that. I can't just start mashing on my dodge button because I made a mistake and a monster is about to wipe me out. I'm not going to be able to dodge. I'm locked in. But that's a concept that's more familiar with people these days, with Elden Ring and Dark Souls and all the Souls-likes that have risen in popularity these days. Just the same, it is important to articulate that you can expect a similar element in Monster Hunter. The hunts are typically challenging boss fights that require learning movesets and using your knowledge to do weapon damage. Now, I think we're coming to what I would probably consider to be the biggest roadblock to this game. And that's simply that the newest game is releasing literally a month from now. And that's going to usher in the 6th generation of Monster Hunter. And it looks like that game is going to iterate on what Monster Hunter World has started and build on that, as well as taking a lot of the great parts from Sunbreak and Rise, and then add that to the mix as well. So you're going to be getting a new game where everybody's going to hop in, and that's the experience that everybody's going to have at the same time. And that's fair. This sort of comes into play if you're deciding you want to spend, I don't know what it is right now, I don't think that it's on sale, but $30 to $50 on a game when the next installment is literally right around the corner. So it's sort of hard to justify making that purchase knowing that the next generation of the game is coming out. That said, it is kind of based on your situation and if you're okay with spending that. The reality is Monster Hunter World is a complete game. One of the things that Capcom does for the Monster Hunter franchise is content drops in the months after a game releases. That's not happening for World anymore. there is a butt ton of extra content, and it's complete. They're done with the content cycle for Monster Hunter World and have been for a couple of years at this point. So when you purchase that game and start playing that, you know that this is the complete package as intended that they wanted. With Monster Hunter Wilds coming out in a month, that's not what that's going to come out and release as. There will be many months still of content and added stuff coming into the game in future months. But that'll be sort of up to you and your own judgment as to whether or not it's worth it for you. One more thing to perhaps consider if you're still a little bit on the fence of waiting for Monster Hunter Wilds or purchasing Monster Hunter World. We have confirmation and do know that there are going to be 2 more open beta tests for Monster Hunter Wilds coming in early and mid-February. And it's open to everyone and free. So I would really recommend and say that those beta weekends would be a great free entry point to see what the game is all about. That said, we do have to recognize that the open beta build of the game is how do I say this? The open beta build that we will be playing and have access to is about a year behind what the actual release of the game is from the development cycle. So all the optimizations that Capcom's been adding and into the game over this last year aren't going to be present there. So you will expect frame rate drops, some optimization issues, some jankiness, perhaps a lot of things not loading in right and that sort of thing. So just something to be aware of. And a lot of weapon tunings aren't going to be necessarily in that build of the game yet. They did an open beta a few months ago in which they collected a lot of feedback from the player base during that time as well in order to implement some of those things, and those will not be present in these 2 open betas that are coming up. But it is still a great place to figure out if Monster Hunter is for you. So, with all that out of the way, hopefully that was helpful in sharing what Monster Hunter World is all about and why or why not you should get into it. I really do love this game and do recommend it to everyone to give a try. That said, it is fair and I do understand that not every game is for everyone. If you're interested in what some hunts can look like, there are tons of other videos on this channel as I'm trying to complete a Gunlance challenge before Monster Hunter Wilds releases. I'll be taking on monsters, each of the monsters from throughout the whole game up until the last monster that was integrated into it, named Fatalis. I've never fought a number of the endgame monsters, namely there's 5 I think that I haven't gotten to, and I'm just getting to them now. So if you feel like watching those hunts and cheering me on or giving advice, feel free to come hang out. I stream at Twitch at twitch.tv/coconut_gaming_life or right here on YouTube as well. The links will be in the description and I'd love to have you come by. Thank you guys for watching the video and feel free to like and subscribe and join our little community. Thanks again. Bye.